What I'll start off with is I'll tell you what I've been doing for the past 2 years. Not a lot. I'm a regular student like most of you. I default on a couple of projects, but that's a different thing altogether. I have been reading forest full of articles, newspapers, books, reports with errors, and watching presentations, videos, and TED Talks on climate change and the environment. I've been doing that for the past 2 years. What I've also been doing is I've been going up to people and I've been shaking them. I've been telling them, that climate change is something that is happening, and that the state of the environment isn't really up to speed. That there is actually something very seriously wrong with that. Now, I've been doing those two things, and a consequence of that, a very weird consequence of that, is that I get to cash in my quote-unquote carbon credits at conferences and seminars, where I meet people, political leaders, negotiators, secretaries, undersecretaries, experts, where I get to see them discuss climate change. Some of them fly over from different parts of the world and they say the same things. Some of them say what they said at the last conference. Some of them state the obvious. Some of them crack really good jokes. But, there is a small portion that actually makes sense. But in the grand scheme of things, my experiences at these seminars and conferences, well, has essentially been a free lunch. I've enjoyed the lunches and dinner. So what I'm going to do now is, allow me to indulge myself here. I'm going to try and snap you out of your siesta, since we had lunch a little while ago. By a show of hands, we're going to have an opinion poll. By a show of hands, I want you to answer this question. Now, how many of you think climate change is a real challenge and not just hype? Now, please raise your hands if you think climate change is a real challenge. Wow. I couldn't have, guessed your opinions. I had no idea what you would say. So I guessed that it would be something like this, and this is probably what I expected. 80% of you saying yes, and, a few of you saying no. I, on the other hand, think climate change is excessively hyped. I really don't think it's such a big problem. It's just hype. Why do I say this? I say this because I believe in what a certain gentleman called Bjorn Lomborg said. Now, he's a Danish political scientist. He works with the Copenhagen Consensus. And he states basically that we need to prioritize global concerns. And climate change really isn't a concern, because the amount of money we'll invest there, the relief is not directly proportionate to that. The number of serviced with that kind of investment is very less. So he says that there are other problems. There are other problems that should be prioritized, and this is based on welfare economics. Now, let me introduce you to some of the problems which are not that glamorous or popular, which couldn't make it to the cover of Sports Illustrated this year. So some of the global problems that we face, apart from climate change, are healthcare, AIDS, malaria. We need healthcare solutions. Cheap healthcare is something which is very important, and I'm pretty sure one of the speakers in the coming sessions will touch upon that. Energy security, food security, social equality, education. These are issues that the world faces, and a lot more people face immediately, right now. But not within this auditorium. Within this auditorium, these things are not our concerns. We have the answers to all these questions. So the point is, even though I think climate change is excessively hyped, I think that it's very important too. Why? I'll get to that. But look at what Radiohead says. They say people are aware but not that bothered. This is basically with respect to this, and to a certain extent with respect to climate change also. Now, before I tell you what this slide is about, I just want to urge you to think about the solutions that you have for all these problems. Look at healthcare. You need education. You need people to know what the right practices are. You need technology. You need investment. Energy security, same thing. Research, technology, investment. Food security, again, better know-how, technology, food security, whatever. Social equality, same thing. Education, educating the educators. All these problems have similar solutions. Climate change also has a similar solution. Education, awareness, technology, investment. Now, the point I'm trying to make is the problem that we face today is not climate change or these issues. It's basically sustainable development. But why is climate change excessively hyped, and why do I think it's a very good idea to talk more about climate change? Because, ladies and gentlemen, the centerpiece of this problem is a problem that the apathetic middle class, you and me, actually feel slightly worried about. We're not worried about the peripherals. This is like a demon, and this is like the face of the demon. So that's the point I'm trying to raise over here. Climate change is something that we might be afraid of, because we know that this monkey could get onto our back pretty soon. So I'm going to give you an example of how climate change can be dangerous. You heard Al Gore, you know about the glaciers melting, you know about the sea level rising, you know all of that. Let me give you an example which is very India specific. The Satluj River, it originates in Tibet, right? It flows across the northern plains through Punjab and it goes to Pakistan. Now, We have a treaty, a water treaty with Pakistan, where we take, say, X cusecs of water and the rest goes to Pakistan. Now, imagine, a scenario where climate change happens and, there are droughts and, erratic rainfall patterns and the river dries up. So maybe the plains in Punjab will not have water, and that feeds most of this country. And what if we take out our X cusecs and there's nothing left for Pakistan? What is going to happen? So this is climate change giving you a war-like situation. Maybe migration, maybe infiltration, maybe war. So climate change is a real problem. It's excessively hyped. I'm not going to deny that. But it is hyped for people like you and me, for the policymakers of the future, for the electorate. We are going to be the electorate of the future. So that's why I think hyping or talking about climate change is a very good idea. Now, what are the solutions that are discussed? You looked at what Al Gore said. He talked about policy changes, government action. He talked about individual action. Now, that was in 2006. Coming to 2010, a lot of things have been lost. Now people focus on, COPs. We need more conference of parties. We need to get together, and we need to, countries need to thrash out agreements. We need to do all of that. They stress on need for innovation and research. I think there's a huge disconnect. Really, I really do. The reason for that is because I really don't believe in this policy of COPs and, policy approach. The reason for that is three flaws. There is no global governance. To be perfectly honest, if, say, the Prime Minister of XYZ country says, I'm going to cut emissions by 20%, 5 years later it's down by only 15%, what are you going to do? Put him in jail? Yeah, that happens every day, right? The Prime Minister of X country is in jail, and the Prime Minister of Y country is in the slammer, and somebody's having a court case too. So global governance is something that is still finding its teeth, so to speak. And what do you mean by legally binding? There really isn't any consensus on that. Now, the second point I want to raise is green or re-election. Now, if USA has to come on board, they need to invest about $3 trillion to convert their polluting sources of energy into renewable or green sources of energy. Now, $3 trillion, they just passed a healthcare bill, and that was a major issue for them. So imagine Obama telling his electorate that I need $3 trillion to do this. He's never going to come back. And the same applies to countries like India. India's 70% line. You've got so many things that 70% of our population doesn't have. 70% may not have access to clean drinking water. 70% may not have access to energy. It may be a different 70%. It may be a different 70% that is yet to touch urbanization. So coming back to the third point, the third flaw that I see, where does the real consensus lie? Does it lie with these countries, with the political leaders? In a sense, it does, because the sweeping changes will come with policy changes, government action. If the government says that, turn off the air conditioners at NSIT, we will have to do that. But till that day comes, till that real consensus comes, what do? We do this. We do individual action, we do community action, and Nandan Nilekani says that, entrepreneurship is an idea that's arrived in India. It's no longer a taboo. And, the best solution for an issue like climate change is social entrepreneurship. Now, I'm going to focus on two things, waste and transport, because those are the things that I've been focusing on with my friends who are actively involved with whatever minor campaigns that we're involved with. Individual action. We've been going to houses, communities close to our college, close to where we live, doing waste audits, telling them how much waste they, generate every day. Now, waste, by the way, municipal solid waste, your vegetables, etc., contribute about 10% of a city's greenhouse gas emissions when they end up in landfill. So you can have an alternative to that. So we introduce them to that alternative. Transport is something we're focusing on. So what started out as individual action, me going and shaking people and telling them, let's do something, has now become community action. And if things go well, and it could turn into social entrepreneurship. What I'm going to do now is give you some India-specific examples. Al Gore spoke about, how you should do this and how you should, take the initiative and make changes and convince people and all of that. Let me give you some live examples that maybe you can pick up from. Now, these are people who are my mentors, friends, acquaintances, people I know who are trying to make a difference. Now, by the way, she's a TED India fellow. She's Poonam Kasturi. And that's Dr. Jaya Deshpande. She's the Delhi representative of an organization, an NGO of sorts called Daily Dump. Now, what they've done is, they've done something brilliant. It's a sustainable design idea. Terracotta pots to reduce your greenhouse gas, to reduce, the burden that you impose on basic civic facilities. How? I'll tell you later. This is what their product range looks like. That's like the Jedi terracotta pot. And no, the lady doesn't come with the terracotta pots. You've got to use them. How does it work? Well, I'll tell you their policy. Their policy is brilliant, actually. You don't need a PhD to do this. Instead of putting your waste in a dustbin, you put it in a terracotta pot to begin with. You have the raw materials, very easy to get these pots. You can somebody who makes spots to make it in a way, make it according to the sustainable design that they have, and it's quote unquote open source. Does not need to travel. Now, imagine the number of carbon miles that are spent on transporting waste from your house to the landfills. Now, that can be reduced by up to 60%. Mixing different waste is bad. That's something we all know about. If you start doing this, you'll feel a certain sense of responsibility towards the planet. I mean, just think about it. You would have thrown something you've eaten on the road. But now, if you're doing something like this, you'll realize that the value of, especially something organic, is so huge. So it's an awareness that you builds up within yourself, and then, again, it spreads to the community. Simple logic. Help recyclers and rag pickers earn more. Initially, we had this idea that, we'll help recycle paper and plastics. But these rag pickers earn their money only from the paper and plastics. So why do you want to put sambar in their paper when they want to pick it up from the waste? Why do you want to do that? It's leftover food. You can put it in your terracotta bin. So that's their idea. Compost is great for the earth. You're connected. Again, you don't need a PhD. Here's another example. Now, these are friends of mine who started an initiative in Mumbai. Cycle Chalao is a campaign which takes students from the nearest railway station to their college. Now, what students did otherwise earlier, they would take autos or taxis, and that is not carbon neutral. Now, they take cycles for the college, leave it there, somebody else would bring it back on the return journey. And they planned it out that way so that, there was enough to and fro movement so that the cycles didn't stagnate at one point. And they had minimal bookkeeping, so it was very hassle-free for the users. Now, what has resulted out of this? Individual action transformed into community action, and now what have they managed? They've managed low SPM levels in that area, low noise pollution, a lower carbon footprint, and a business model. Earnings of 15,000 per month without ads. And if they put ads on their cycles now, it's going to go up to about 45,000 per month. So that's a great start. Here's another example, easy to commute. These are two young professionals from New Delhi, Gurgaon. They're sick of those cars, the traffic jams in Gurgaon. They're sick of the noise. And, it was basically torture for them. So what did they do? They set up a portal, easy to commute. I mean, this is brilliant. Just look at this. You know where a person is going from and to. You know the start, return time. You can get the details. Of course, there's a corporate ID verification process, which they have. And after you verify it, you get access to this portal. And it's, again, open source. They want to do it, not for their benefit, but for the benefit of the community. Now, here's a project that I'm doing in my college, Wheelshare. Because we have to use Google Docs, so this was the only green free template I could find. The sheep notwithstanding. Anyway, so the point is, why is carpooling important? Why is it important for college students? Well, I did a calculation with my friend. I carpooled for 4 years. Even though I had a car, I chose not to drive. I saved about 2,000 liters of petrol in 4 years. If I would have taken my car, it would have cost me about 1 lakh rupees. Traveling to and forth has cost me about 40,000 rupees. So I've saved 60. He's saved 40 because I've given him 40. So that's the whole point. When you carpool, you're saving a lot more. How does it happen? We send out a registration form. I mean, this is just 3 questions in that registration form. It's a questionnaire of about 10 to 12 questions, and we try and gauge where that person is from, whether they're actually interested in carpooling, which part of Delhi they live in. So a consequence of that is this is how it looks. This is how their web page looks like. So you've used some free apps like Google Maps or Yahoo Maps, and you can basically map what route they're taking across the city. You will know what year, branch, or class they're in. You will have an access to their college timetable so that you can fix up what times you can come and go at. I mean, this can work in a college, but it can work wonders in an organization which doesn't have cabs or, taxi cabs. Now, here's Delhi. Pictures of Delhi. Oh, we did something. What we did was we videographed the traffic on one of the busiest roads in Delhi, which is the Ring Road near Hayat to Dhaula Kuan. We took a video 15 minutes at different times of the day, and 86% of the vehicles had only one person traveling in that vehicle. So, I mean, there's no wonder, we live in a city which is basically, shifting traffic jams from one flyover to another. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because there is an informal carpooling sector that exists in our city. I don't know how many of you use it. Call center cabs. You want to go from Delhi to Gurgaon, you want to go from Delhi to Dwarka, you want to go from Delhi to Noida. You use a call center cab. They know where to stop. You know where they will stop. 15 bucks, 28 kilometers. It couldn't get cheaper than that. So here's an idea that we're trying to work out. But of course, there are a lot of permissions involved in our idea. We need to go to the local council, the state council, the district council, the national council, the International Council, the Intergalactic Space Council, whatever. There are so many permissions involved. But the idea essentially is, why not have a smart card for an individual and use that smart card basically after a verification process and have card readers on your car. So if you want a carpool, you have designated stops. You stop there, he swipes the card, he enters, he or she, whoever, that's a friend of mine by the way, they enter the car and they get off, wherever they have to or wherever they can. And it's automatically calculated by the card. The kilometers are calculated automatically, so there's no hassles with the money. It's almost like a paperless transaction. Now, I told you about all those permissions, by the way, and we took permissions for a community near our residential area to set up a municipal compost. So it was a lot of hard work, a lot of paperwork, but it worked out in the end. And the amount of satisfaction you get after you do that is phenomenal. It is just phenomenal. So that's something that I want to tell you. Now, a lot of you are going to ask me, why should we do this? Why should we be interested? Where are we going to get the money from? Now, here's a list of organizations that will give you the money. They have the money, they don't know what to do with it, they need solutions, they need ideas, they need small projects to come up somewhere. And this is just off the top of my head. I haven't searched for this on the net. If you search for something on the net, just do a web search for people who are going to fund you for a climate change project. This is going to be full of letters, essentially. Just a few names you can look at. You can go home, maybe if you have an idea, maybe Cycle Chalao project, maybe near NSIT, and you could do that with the Commonwealth Games and the metro being so close to your college. Essentially, that in essence was my presentation. Individual and community action is the solution for climate change till the cops get their act together. Thank you.